Imagine someone just like walking right into your home, claiming your newly renovated living room in the name of the federal government, and then raising your rent.
I mean, the absolute audacity.
Right. All while you are desperately trying to sew curtains to, suppress the memory of your dead husband, and the neighbors are outside literally threatening to shoot each other over a flooded field of alfalfa.
Just a casual Tuesday on the frontier.
Literally. Welcome to the frontier and welcome back to the Snark side, babes. We are so unbelievably thrilled to be back behind the mics today, sitting on this couch and just hanging out with you.
The delusion is already settling in nicely. Welcome back, Snark Squad.
If you are listening to this right now, you are officially the third bestie in the room. So grab a blanket, grab whatever beverage you need to cope with reality, because we are getting entirely too cozy and, honestly, entirely too chaotic today.
The energy in this room is aggressively high right now, and I am, completely here for it. But before we get into the absolute legal and emotional mess that is 1874, we really need to address the elephant in the room, or rather, the stagecoach in the room.
Oh my gosh, we really do. But wait, before we get into literally anything else, I need to give a massive, specific, and highly necessary shout out to one particular listener.
Oh, we have to.
Janelle. Janelle, babes, we see you. We see you sliding into the DMs all week, respectfully, but very firmly demanding that we continue covering Hope Valley.
She was not letting it go.
Not at all. You literally messaged us saying, do not leave me hanging on the prairie. I need to know what happens to the boarding house. And babes, we got you. We always deliver for the Snark Squad.
We do deliver. Eventually.
Yeah.
But keeping in the spirit of absolute transparency with the babes, we really owe you all a massive apology.
I'm literally hanging my head in shame right now. The embarrassment is so real.
It is a formal, yet highly playful apology for the absolute chaos of last week's show. So last week, we sat right here on this exact couch, looked into the camera, and confidently swore up and down that episode 5 was the season finale.
I was practically in tears. I was weeping.
You were. We gave this whole sweeping, emotional goodbye to the characters. We wrapped up our final thoughts.
I was saying things like, how could they end it on such an ambiguous note? I need to know if the mess tent is going to survive the winter.
Right. I gave a highly analytical breakdown of the season's thematic arcs, as if the network had fully rolled the final credits. And as it turns out, we were just entirely fundamentally wrong.
Completely wrong.
We completely miscalculated how television seasons work. And honestly, I am blaming the wine entirely.
It was 100% the wine.
We were a few glasses deep, the vibes were incredibly high, and suddenly we just lost all concept of modern media distribution. I mean, who actually thought a television network would just end a narrative arc on episode 5?
Literally no one. It was obviously the wine speaking. But let's be incredibly clear right now. For the record, we are fully, unconditionally committed to covering Hope Valley until the bitter end.
Locked in.
We are not leaving the frontier. We are staying in the mud. We are staying in the uninsulated mess tents. We are packing our metaphorical wagons, and we are riding this pioneer journey out.
I admire your commitment.
I am so emotionally invested at this point. If they told me there were 20 more episodes in the season, I would just cancel all my plans, quit my job, and live inside my television for the rest of the year.
I still cannot get over the fact that we completely abandoned critical thinking the second we saw a horse-drawn carriage. We just accepted that 5 episodes was a complete historical saga.
I know.
But yes, we are firmly locked in. The frontier delusion continues indefinitely.
It does. Oh, and also super quick, babes, a little merch update for you. I know so many of you have been messaging us completely panicked because your favorite sizes and colors of the Snark Squad hoodies sold out.
They went fast.
So fast. But we have officially reordered. It is in the pipeline. It is coming. Just give us a few weeks to deal with the supply chain, and we will let you know the absolute second it is back in stock.
Exactly. Keep an eye on the socials.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of things we are obsessing over, let's talk about the lived-in bestie moment.
Yes.
The food and drink situation happening in this room right now is honestly unhinged, structurally questionable, but also, bordering on genius.
Oh, I am so excited to talk about this. So tonight's beverage, babes, we are back on the rosé. But not just any rosé. Babes, it is a rosé slushie.
Yes, a slush.
We took a perfectly good, very respectable bottle of rosé, and we ran it through the Ninja slush machine. And let me tell you, it is a total revelation.
It is something, all right.
I'm absolutely obsessed with the vibe. It feels like a high-end adult snow cone that you'd buy at an exclusive beach club, but we are just drinking it in sweatpants.
I have to interject here because from a purely analytical, scientific standpoint, freezing wine like this fundamentally alters its chemical composition.
Oh, here we go.
You are aggressively messing with the delicate balance of the tannins, the acidity, and the sugar content. The freezing point of alcohol is significantly lower than water, so you're basically separating the components.
But you're drinking it. You're literally taking a massive sip right now.
I stood in the kitchen for 10 minutes, questioning the absolute mechanics of pouring a decent vintage into a piece of plastic machinery designed for, like, blue raspberry syrup at a children's carnival. But I am happily drinking it.
Exactly.
I'm not saying I hate the outcome. I'm just saying a certified sommelier would probably have a stress-induced cardiac event if they walked into our kitchen right now. It's aggressively refreshing, but it's a crime against viticulture.
It is divine. It is the absolute perfect temperature for gossip. And it pairs perfectly with what we just devoured before hitting record.
We really did devour it.
We have to talk about the snacks, because we made a crab salad, and, babes, my mouth is watering just thinking about it again.
It was a very solid structural achievement of a salad. You really managed the moisture levels perfectly.
It was a culinary masterpiece. Okay, picture this. Fresh, crisp, buttery Bibb lettuce as the base. Cucumbers chopped perfectly into these tiny uniform cubes so you get a crunch in every single bite.
The knife work was essential.
Finely shredded carrots for a little sweetness, and all these beautiful, vibrant, crunchy vegetables. But the absolute secret ingredient, the thing that elevates it from a standard lunch to a Michelin star experience, is Kewpie mayo.
We need to explain why Kewpie mayo works, because it's not just a brand preference. It's chemical engineering.
Bro, educate the babes.
Standard American mayonnaise uses whole eggs and white vinegar. Kewpie uses only egg yolks, which makes it significantly richer and more custard-like.
It's so velvety.
And it uses a proprietary blend of vinegars, including apple cider and rice vinegar. Plus, it contains naturally occurring MSG. That's why it triggers that intense umami receptor in your brain.
If you are not using Kewpie mayo in your crab salads, what are you even doing with your life? It makes the entire dish so rich and savory. But because of the crisp lettuce and the cucumber, the whole thing still feels so fresh and light. It feels indulgent, but in a very specific, I am a wealthy, mysterious widow lunching at an exclusive country club kind of way.
We didn't exactly eat it like wealthy widows, though.
You really didn't.
We were literally standing over the kitchen island, mixing it in this massive metal bowl, and just taste testing it together, which really just meant eating half of the total volume straight out of the mixing bowl with 2 forks before it ever saw a plate.
Shamelessly.
We shamelessly went back for seconds standing up before we even came in here to record.
Zero regrets, babes. The vibes in the kitchen were immaculate. Okay, let's pivot for a second. Let's do our roses and thorns of the day.
Because it's Friday.
Because, babes, it is a Friday, and let's celebrate the absolute ultimate perk of being dentists in our real, non-recording lives. We finished work early today. We saw our last patient at 1 o'clock, and we were out the door.
Truly the greatest rose of the week. Shutting down the clinic, turning off the drill, stripping off the personal protective equipment, and walking out into the actual afternoon sunlight is a uniquely powerful feeling.
It almost feels illegal.
It really does. So we finished work early. We had this burst of Friday energy, and then we went to a bachata class this afternoon.
We did.
And class is an incredibly generous term for what I experienced in that room.
Yeah.
It was more of a physical and psychological trial.
Stop. The energy in that room was incredible. It was so sensual. The music was pulsing. The bass was vibrating through the floorboards, and everyone was just feeling the rhythm.
Everyone except me.
I honestly felt like a completely unlocked, higher vibrational version of myself. The dancing actually felt so natural once you stopped overthinking and just let the music take over your hips. It's all about the connection and the sway.
Okay, let's inject a little objective reality into this narrative. I watched you. You looked like you were having a deeply emotional, transcendent spiritual awakening in the middle of a mirrored dance studio in a strip mall. Meanwhile, I am over there trying to analytically break down a 4-step syncopated hip sequence. I was calculating the weight distribution from the ball of my foot to my heel.
What you cannot do.
I felt like I looked like a baby giraffe trying to learn how to walk on a frozen pond. My brain was screaming, Step 1, pivot. Step 2, rotate the pelvis. Step 3, don't fall over. Bachata fundamentally does not reward an analytical mindset.
No, see, that's exactly the problem. You were thinking way too much. You just have to let go and be vulnerable in the room.
Vulnerability is not my strong suit.
You refuse to let your guard down. You can't calculate bachata. You have to feel it. But I loved it. I am ready to book a trip to the Dominican Republic immediately. Okay, so what is your official rose and thorn for the day?
My rose is definitively leaving the dental office at 1:30. Untouchable feeling.
Yes.
My thorn, honestly, my thorn was the chaotic, hyper-stressful parking situation outside the dance studio. I had parallel parked my car in a steep incline with a line of angry honking cars behind me. I felt the stress spike my cortisol levels to absolute maximum capacity. I was gripping the steering wheel like it was a life raft.
Oh my gosh, parking anxiety is so intensely real. I completely feel you on that. My stomach completely drops when someone honks while I'm trying to parallel park.
It's deeply traumatic.
It's like, give me a second, I am doing complex spatial geometry here. Your honking is throwing off my angles.
It's a complete failure of urban planning. What about you?
My rose was definitely the bachata class, just feeling that movement, getting out of the clinical headspace of dentistry and into my body.
And your thorn?
My thorn is that I snagged my absolute favorite softest knit sweater on a cabinet handle in the break room this morning. It pulled a massive thread right down the sleeve, and I was just overly deeply emotional about it for like 20 solid minutes.
You practically held a state funeral for a cardigan.
It was devastating.
You were cradling the ruined sleeve against your chest like it was a wounded bird. I had to gently remind you that scissors exist and that the garment was not, in fact, bleeding.
It was a beautiful sweater. The craftsmanship was impeccable. Anyway, Snark Squad babes, we want you to mentally share your own roses and thorns right now.
Send them into the ether.
Check in with yourselves wherever you are, in the car, on a walk, folding laundry. We are holding space for your chaotic parking stories, your ruined knitwear, and your early Friday victories.
Or just drop them in the comments. Now let's transition into the actual substance of the show because we have a staggering amount of ground to cover.
Yeah.
Literally and legally.
Okay, so watching Hope Valley this week, I am not going to lie, it low-key makes me wish we were modern countryside baddies.
You would last 2 days without Wi-Fi.
Okay, rude, but true. Still, there is a very specific, curated aesthetic happening on this show that is deeply, fundamentally appealing to my soul.
It's the flannel. It's the dirt. It's the roaring fires. It's the romantic illusion of a simpler life that, upon any real scrutiny, is actually incredibly complicated, dangerous, and exhausting.
Let's spiral on this question for a second before we get into the recap. If we were magically transported to 1874, what kind of countryside babe would you be?
Oh, I know exactly what I'd be.
Would you be the soft, nurturing pie baker who is always covered in flour and has a house that smells like cinnamon? The mysterious, distant widow who lives in a massive Victorian house on the edge of town, wears black lace, and never speaks to the locals?
You're going.
The absolute girl boss running the entire local economy from the trading post? Or just a feral hermit avoiding absolutely everyone?
Oh, this isn't even a question. I am the hermit. Unquestionably.
I knew you would say that.
I would have a fortified cabin at the absolute furthest, most legally ambiguous edge of the property line. I would not attend the town meetings unless the agenda directly impacted my property taxes or water rights.
You would just be this ominous presence.
I would sit on a wraparound porch with a very large, terrifying, highly trained dog, and I would analytically observe the town's messy drama through a brass spyglass. I would be a rumor. What about you?
See, part of me wants to say I'd be the mysterious, distant widow, but let's be real with ourselves. I would be the messy, highly involved town gossip who is desperately trying to brand herself as the soft, nurturing pie baker.
Absolutely. The rebrand would be aggressive.
I would be baking these elaborate artisan sourdough loaves, bringing them to everyone's house in little woven baskets, but secretly, I'm only using the delivery as an excuse to get inside their foyers to find out why the blacksmith isn't speaking to the tailor anymore.
You'd be emotionally invested in absolutely everyone's private business.
I would be the social hub.
The central nervous system of the town's drama. You'd be running a boarding house of your own, not for the income, but just so you had a captive, rotating audience for your crab salads and whatever the 19th century equivalent of a rosé slushy is.
Exactly. I would run the social registry. And honestly, babes, we are so cozy right now. I am tipsy on this freezing slushy. I have a belly full of Kewpie mayo, and I am fully, completely ready to dive headfirst into the muddy, high-stakes, small-town drama of 1874. Let's get into the recap.
Let's do it. Welcome to episode 6, which is heavily, almost aggressively titled Common Ground.
The drama in this hour of television. So we open the show, and right out of the gate, we have to talk about the absolute staggering audacity of Constable Alexander Vaughn.
The audacity is practically a character of its own. It takes up the entire room.
It really does. Let's set the scene for the babes, because the context here is everything. Rebecca, played so flawlessly and with so much nuance by Bethany Joy Lenz, has been working herself to the literal bone.
She is exhausting to watch.
She is single-handedly trying to repair this dilapidated, drafty shack of a boarding house in what was then called Coal Valley. She's up at all hours of the night, holding a lantern, making curtains from scratch, stressing out over whether the floral pattern is perfectly aligned for all the guest rooms.
The obsession with the floral pattern was a clear indicator of a psychological break.
She's deeply stressed about paying Vince, the local craftsman, for the custom furniture that is currently en route. She is a woman teetering on the absolute edge of physical and mental collapse.
And right into that pressure cooker walks Alexander. Lachlan Cornby looks great, the red serge uniform is pristine, but his character's behavior here is a fascinating study in unchecked male entitlement, dressed up in the authority of the state.
It is infuriating.
He walks into her newly renovated, highly stressed environment, uninvited, and simply decides he is moving in.
He just announces it. He stands in her parlor and he's like, my old room isn't ready. That's totally fine. I'll just take it as is.
So generous of him.
Right. Oh, and by the way, my commanding officer back in headquarters has explicitly authorized me to make your private boarding house my official base of operations.
Just a casual, hostile takeover of a small business.
And then, as if that isn't enough, he unilaterally raises his own rent from $5 a week to a whopping $7 a week, acting like he's doing her a massive financial favor.
We really need to unpack and roast this moment because the writing frames it as a polite, gentlemanly inquiry, but legally and practically it is not a request. He is a Mountie.
He has a badge.
It's exactly. In 1874, the Northwest Mounted Police weren't just local cops. They were the physical manifestation of the Canadian federal government sent out to establish sovereignty over the frontier. So when he looks at this exhausted single mother and says, I'm going to use your parlor for Mountie business, which I'll try to keep to a minimum, he is issuing a polite demand from a man with a badge and a gun.
It's so wild. I was having such a visceral, protective, emotional reaction to this scene. I was fiercely protective of Rebecca. Think about her psychological state.
It's a nightmare for her.
She literally packed up her young daughter, Sarah, abandoned her entire life, and fled all the way to the untamed wilderness, specifically to escape crooked, manipulative policemen from her past in the city. And now, she has a very handsome but very bossy law enforcement officer literally living under her roof.
Setting up a police precinct in her living room, where she sleeps.
Yes, it is the ultimate dramatic irony.
Let's break this down with a modern analogy so we can really grasp the boundary violation here. Imagine you rent out a spare bedroom in your house to a guy you barely know. You're trying to run a quiet Airbnb.
Okay, tracking.
And then your landlord, or better yet, a local police detective, just shows up, decides he's crashing on your couch permanently, sets up his remote work office on your kitchen island with his monitors and files, and tells you he's paying you in protection.
Yes, it's exactly like that. It is so suffocating.
And she's terrified because she's trapped. If she pushes back too hard, if she demands he leave, she draws suspicion to herself. Alexander literally says to her, if you're worried about me bringing danger to your door, the whole reason I'm out here is to protect folks like you.
The savior complex.
Which analytically is the exact verbatim line a mobster uses when they're shaking down a local bakery for protection money. Nice boarding house you got here. Be ashamed if something happened to it.
Oh my gosh, it really is a shakedown disguised as chivalry. But Rebecca handles it like such an absolute queen. She's internalizing all this panic, but on the surface, she remains perfectly composed.
She plays it very cool.
You see her tell Sarah later, behind closed doors, he seems well-intentioned, but we have to be extremely careful. She is playing high-stakes 4D chess, managing her trauma and her survival, while he is just walking around tracking mud on her floorboards like he owns the place.
He's incredibly judgmental, too. He just naturally assumes his legal authority supersedes her personal autonomy. But the universe doesn't let him get too comfortable in his new parlor office, because almost immediately the town gets hit with an environmental crisis.
The Great Alfalfa Flood of 1874.
Yes, the agricultural disaster.
The drama of the flood. Okay, so before the water hits, we get this hilarious, slightly romantic, very rugged scene with Tom Moore, the local rancher. Benjamin Ayres plays him with so much charm.
He does wear the hat well.
Tom is out in the corral, covered in dust, physically trying to break his wild stallion, Thunder.
Trying being the operative, highly generous word. The horse is winning.
He is struggling so hard. The horse is completely wild, rearing up, and Tom's friend Nash is just standing on the fence line, entirely mocking him.
Nash was thoroughly enjoying the show.
Nash is basically like, you're going to shatter both your femurs before you break that horse. It was such a lived-in, funny, authentic buddy moment. And Tom, sweating through his shirt, says the secret to breaking a horse is finding common ground. Title drop. Boom.
A very heavy-handed, neon-flashing metaphor for the thematic core of the entire episode, but we'll allow it.
Yeah.
So Tom is entirely distracted by the stubbornness of Thunder, and meanwhile, down in the valley, his precious alfalfa crop is literally drowning.
It is an absolute disaster for him. The ranch hands are running around screaming about the water levels, and we have to understand the stakes here. Tom has spent all this time, money, and labor planting this specific feed for his cattle so they can survive the brutal incoming winter.
The winter is always incoming on this show.
If that alfalfa rots in the floodwater, his cattle starve and he loses everything. But the water isn't a natural flood. It's pouring in from a redirected stream.
Right, because Archie Doyle, the resident town prospector, has deliberately dammed the stream further up the mountain to create a pool to pan for gold. This action immediately sets off a massive, highly volatile frontier feud.
Ranchers versus prospectors.
Which is the classic Western genre trope. But this show injects it with very real, highly messy, legal and economic implications.
The legal chaos of this specific conflict is so fascinating to me. So here is the breakdown of the dispute, babes. Listen closely because this gets incredibly messy.
It really does.
Tom Moore has been physically working this specific piece of land for 3.5 years. He cleared the trees, he pulled the stumps, he tilled the soil, he planted the crops. He put his literal blood, sweat, and tears into making it arable. But he never formally filed any paperwork because, frankly, there were no formal property laws out there 3 years ago. It was essentially squatters' rights.
Precisely. Under traditional squatters' rights or adverse possession, you occupy and improve the land, and it becomes yours by virtue of labor. But then the distant government passes a new statutory law.
Which changes everything.
The new law dictates that whoever files a formal land patent application first with the magistrate officially gets the deed to the land. And Archie Doyle, the prospector who just dammed the river, was the first one to literally submit the paperwork.
And we only find this out because of his kid.
Yes. We find out because Archie's young daughter, who's apparently a savant legal scholar at age 10, read the new ordinance in a newspaper from the city.
I love the detail. His little daughter is just reciting complex patent law in the middle of a muddy dirt road. It was iconic. But Tom is furious. His livelihood is underwater, and the guy who flooded it just legally stole the land out from under him.
That's what happens.
Constable Alexander Vaughn decides he is going to step in and hold an emergency hearing to resolve the dispute.
And where does the esteemed constable hold this crucial legal tribunal? In a courthouse. A rented town hall, a barn. No, he unilaterally turns Rebecca's newly furnished, pristine dining room into a makeshift courtroom.
The absolute disrespect of this man. Vince literally just delivered this beautiful handcrafted dining furniture. Clayton spent hours helping build the custom dining table.
The table is gorgeous, to be fair.
Rebecca is already having a silent panic attack about how she's going to pay for it all, and suddenly, two angry, dirty, dripping wet men are slamming their muddy fists on her pristine, unvarnished table, screaming at each other.
Which naturally leads to my absolute favorite Rebecca moment of the entire season. The pioneer queen rises from the ashes of her stress.
Oh, it gave me full-body chills. She walks into the dining room, she sees these men yelling, and she doesn't even raise her voice, she doesn't scream. She just completely commands the energetic space of the room.
She owned them.
She looks at them with this icy glare and tells them, "While you're in my establishment, you will treat the furniture and each other with respect, or I'll send you outside into the mud to settle it." And both of these grown, rugged, tough frontiermen just look down at their boots, completely ashamed, like toddlers who just got caught drawing on the living room walls.
It was a fantastic, incredibly satisfying power dynamic shift.
Yeah.
Alexander's sitting there in his bright red uniform trying to maintain governmental order, and Rebecca just shuts the entire room down with a whisper and a glare.
I stand a wilderness pioneer queen.
But then we get to the actual substance of the trial, the verdict.
Right. So Alexander listens to both sides. He hears Tom talk about his 3 years of backbreaking labor. He hears Doyle cite the exact letter of the new patent law. Alexander takes this long, dramatic television pause, and then he quotes his commanding commissioner.
Get ready for the platitude.
He says, "In a world of right and wrong, Uphold what is right.
Which is a beautiful, deeply poetic sentiment, but it is an absolutely terrible, terrifying foundation for jurisprudence.
But wait, hear me out. He rules in Tom's favor. Even though Doyle technically filed the paperwork first, Alexander argues that the spirit of the new law was meant to organize unclaimed, wild, empty territory, not to steal a functioning ranch that a man has been working for years.
So Tom gets to keep his land.
But because Alexander wants to be a fair and balanced mediator, he grants Doyle a legal easement so he can legally cross Tom's property to get to other undammed streams without ruining Tom's water supply.
Okay, we need to push back on this for a second. We have to
Gotcha.
debate the actual mechanics of this ruling because it is wild. First, let's explain what an easement actually is, because the show just throws the word out there.
Yes, please.
An easement is a non-possessory property interest. It means you don't own the land, but you have a legally protected right to use a specific portion of it for a specific purpose.
Oh, like how my parents' neighbor has the legal right to use their shared driveway to get to his garage, even though my parents technically own the concrete.
Exactly. It's a right of way. In 1874, granting an easement for water access was a huge deal in mining towns. But analytically, does Alexander actually have the legal authority to just arbitrarily reinterpret federal property law based on his personal moral compass?
He's the Mountie.
He essentially just vetoed a federal statute because he liked Tom's vibe better.
I mean, earlier in the episode, Alexander explicitly said that the government gave the Mounties the authority of magistrates because the territory is so unbelievably vast. He said there were 2.5 million square miles and only 300 Mounties out there.
That is a logistical nightmare.
They have to make judgment calls. They're the judge, jury, and police all rolled into one.
I completely understand the logistical necessity of that kind of broad authority. But analytically, legally, it is a nightmare. Think about it in modern terms. It would be like if someone legally registered a domain name, say a squatter buys the rights to your business's website name. Cyber squatting.
Ugh, the worst.
Then a local beat cop shows up at your house, decides the cyber squatter is morally wrong, forcefully transfers the domain back to you, and gives the squatter a password to use your guest Wi-Fi as a compromise.
That is a hilarious comparison.
I am maintaining strict absolute impartiality here on the politics of squatter versus patent rights, but from a purely dramatic reality TV perspective, Alexander is totally just making it up as he goes. He is freestyling frontier law based on vibes.
He really is freestyling. But you know what? It works. It makes for fantastic, highly engaging television. It's like Judge Judy, but with cowboy hats, muddy boots, and profound emotional stakes.
It's very Judge Judy.
And honestly, it worked out in the end. Tom realized it was a fair compromise to save his farm, and Doyle got his easement to keep prospecting. Crisis temporarily averted.
Averted for now. But speaking of economic crises, we absolutely need to talk about the localized economic collapse happening in the background with the Yost family. This subplot is quietly devastating.
Oh, my heart aches so deeply for them. The sourdough economy. Okay, so Lars Yost, this sweet, desperate husband, is out there day after day, knee-deep in freezing water, panning for gold.
Which is brutal work.
And he is just completely failing. He is trying so hard, freezing his hands off, but he finally brings his nugget to the trading post to get weighed. And the assayer weighs it, and it's barely 10 grains of gold. 10 grains. He gets a measly $10 for weeks of brutal labor.
Which is financially devastating. It perfectly illustrates the brutal reality of the gold rush aesthetic. Everyone thinks they're going to strike it rich, but the mechanics of panning are incredibly inefficient.
Got all luck.
You're relying on the specific gravity of gold to separate it from thousands of pounds of useless gravel. Lars realizes, very astutely, that he cannot provide for his family on a statistical pipe dream. He goes back to his wife Rachel and delivers the hard, crushing truth.
He's so sad.
He says they have to pack up, abandon their pioneer dream, and move to the industrialized Union City so he can take a guaranteed wage job working in a candle factory.
A candle factory. It sounds so bleak, so Dickensian. To leave the beautiful open mountains to go pour hot wax in a dark city factory. But the way Rachel handles this news, babes, I was swooning. I was literally screaming at my television screen at how pure and cute they are.
It was a highly emotional, highly dramatic moment. You definitely shrieked.
I couldn't help it. Rachel is so fiercely loyal. And let's look at what she's doing while he tells her this. She has been baking sourdough bread from scratch, but she isn't in a nice kitchen. She is baking this bread in a heavy cast iron pot over an open, smoky fire pit outside in the dirt.
A logistical nightmare.
Which, by the way, maintaining a wild yeast sourdough starter in a muddy, temperature-fluctuating frontier tent is practically an extreme sport. And when Lars tells her he feels like a complete failure as a provider, she doesn't get angry. She doesn't panic.
She doesn't blame him.
She looks at him with so much deep, profound love and says, "When I look at you, I see a wonderful husband and father. I hit pay dirt the day I married you."
I hit pay dirt the day I married you. It is a genuinely great line of dialogue. Very poetic for a woman standing next to a muddy fire pit holding a wooden spoon.
It is the ultimate romance. It is the definition of true partnership. They're in this terrible, terrifying financial situation, but they are an entirely united front. They are ready to walk away together. And then, at the 11th hour, Rebecca steps in with the ultimate logistical girl boss solution.
Because Rebecca, despite her own profound physical exhaustion, physically cannot let a logistical problem go unsolved in her presence. She is a systemic fixer.
Exactly. Rebecca finally realizes that she is spread way, way too thin. She physically cannot run the boarding house renovations, sew all the curtains, manage Alexander's boundary issues, and cook 3 hot meals a day for the massive mess tent full of hungry miners.
She's going to die of exhaustion.
So she pulls Rachel and Lars aside just as they are packing their wagon to leave. She offers them a brilliant trade. If they stay and Rachel takes over completely running the mess tent, Rebecca will give them a permanent room in the boarding house and all their meals for free.
It is an incredibly elegant, mutually beneficial solution. It solves Rebecca's critical labor shortage, it provides immediate housing stability and food security for the Yosts, and it allows Lars to keep prospecting part-time without the crushing, ticking clock pressure of imminent starvation. It is a microeconomy functioning perfectly through mutual aid.
It really is. It's community in action. And for the super fans of the original show, this specific moment is such a beautiful, rewarding piece of setup because Rachel and Lars's baby, little baby Ned.
Yes, the lore connects.
He grows up to be Ned Yost, who runs the mercantile and is an absolute staple legacy character in the original show. It gives you absolute chills knowing this desperate, beautiful moment is how his family's long history in the Valley officially started.
It is a very solid, satisfying piece of world building from the writers. But we cannot ignore the underlying psychology of why Rebecca needed that massive amount of help in the first place. This brings us to the emotional core, the dark center of the episode.
The grief. Oh, babes, this whole sequence completely broke me. We find out the real reason Rebecca has been overworking herself. Sewing curtains at midnight, stressing over every penny, refusing to sleep. She isn't just a perfectionist, she is actively, desperately avoiding her trauma.
She is weaponizing her own productivity to avoid processing her feelings.
Yeah.
It is a classic trauma response. If you never stop moving, the grief can't catch you.
Yes, exactly that. We discover that it is the exact anniversary of her late husband Jim's birthday. The show finally reveals that Jim died of pleurisy after a long, drawn-out illness.
Which is horrific.
And Rebecca has just been running on absolute fumes, trying to outrun the pain of that memory, to the point where her body physically shuts down. She literally faints face first in the middle of the muddy street.
It was a highly dramatic, cinematic collapse. But before we get to the rescue, we should explain what pleurisy actually is, because it makes her trauma make a lot more sense.
Right, the medical background.
Pleurisy is an inflammation of the pleura, the tissue that lines your lungs and chest cavity. Today, we treat the underlying infection with antibiotics. But in the 19th century, without antibiotics, it meant every single breath you took caused sharp, stabbing chest pain.
Oh my gosh, that sounds agonizing.
It was a slow, agonizing, suffocating way to die. Watching her husband go through that would have been profoundly traumatizing.
That is so dark, and it makes so much sense why she can't even bear to speak his name out loud, so she collapses from the exhaustion of carrying all that. And who is there to catch her? Tom Moore.
Of course it was Tom.
It was such a classic Sleeping Beauty trope moment, but I didn't even care. I loved it. He swoops in, catches her right before her face hits the mud, carries her bridal style into the boarding house, and gently lays her on the bed.
Very heroic.
When she finally wakes up, the camera shows her vision is all fuzzy, and the very first thing she sees coming into focus is Tom looking down at her with so much genuine worry and care.
I will concede it was beautifully shot and incredibly romantic framing.
Yeah.
However, I have to point out the cinematic absurdity of this specific scene. She has been doing hard physical labor for 48 hours straight. She passes out from sheer physical and emotional depletion.
Okay, yes, but...
And yet her hair, Absolutely perfect. Flawless, cascading, perfectly ironed waves, not a single flyaway strand. She is unconscious, malnourished, and still serving a completely put-together, high-fashion pioneer aesthetic.
Okay, yes. Her hair always looks completely incredible, even in the middle of a medical emergency.
Yeah.
The frontier humidity does not affect Bethany Joylands.
It's just physically impossible.
But let's focus on the emotional recovery here, because this is where Hattie Quinn steps in, and Hattie officially cements herself as the MVP bestie of this entire town.
Jill Hennessy is doing some incredibly grounded, subtle work in this role. Hattie's the only person in town who can cut through Rebecca's stubborn, defensive exterior.
Hattie gives her the absolute best, most necessary tough love about the realities of single motherhood. She physically removes Rebecca from the stressful boarding house, takes her to this beautiful, peaceful, secluded spot by the river, and finally opens up about her own late husband, Frank.
It was a very quiet, powerful scene.
She talks about how Frank used to sit at that exact lucky spot, fishing for hours, and how he would tell their daughter, Olivia, these magical, tall tales about mermaids living in the lake and pirate treasure hidden in the river.
And in that conversation, Hattie delivers the ultimate thesis of the entire episode. Grief has a way of catching up with you, whether you like it or not.
It's so profoundly true. You can't outrun it with a sewing machine. Hattie makes Rebecca realize that by fiercely avoiding her own grief, she's actually isolating her daughter, Sarah.
Because Sarah is grieving too.
Because Sarah just wants to talk about her papa. She wants to remember him. So we get this incredible, cathartic, emotional climax. Rebecca finally goes back, sits down on the bed with Sarah, and they talk about Jim. They remember how much he loved the fall season, how he loved picking fresh apples to bake into strudels and pies.
And then they go outside and literally plant an apple seed in the dirt together. Just one single seed.
It was symbolic.
Which analytically seems like a remarkably low probability strategy for agricultural success. But symbolically, as a physical manifestation of planting roots and accepting the future, it works perfectly.
It's beautiful. And then they go back inside, and Rebecca flips over this framed portrait they have of Jim. She removes the backing, and she shows Sarah a hidden message he wrote on the back before he died.
The hidden message.
To Sarah, you will always be the source of my greatest pride. Love, Papa. Babes, I was demanding tissues. I was an absolute wreck on the couch. It was such a pure, healing, necessary moment for their relationship.
It was vital emotional catharsis for the characters. But because this is television and we cannot have sustained peace, the very moment they find a semblance of emotional closure, the writers drop a massive, terrifying cliffhanger on us in the final minutes.
The Chicago cliffhanger. Babes, my jaw literally unhinged and hit the floor.
So earlier in the episode, Hattie's daughter, Olivia, who we know is an incredibly talented sketch artist, draws a very innocent, sweet portrait of Rebecca and Sarah sitting together.
A lovely, wholesome gesture from a friend.
But somehow, through the magic of 1870s newspaper syndication, that specific drawing makes its way out of the isolated frontier and gets printed in a major newspaper all the way in Chicago.
And who happens to be sitting in a lavish parlor reading that exact Chicago newspaper?
Jim's parents.
The wealthy grandparents.
Yeah.
The exact people Rebecca is utterly terrified of. The people she suspects will use their immense wealth, influence, and social standing to petition the courts and take full legal custody of Sarah away from her.
The threat is so intensely real. The camera pans ominously over the drawing in the newspaper, and you just know the outside world is officially knocking on the door of Hope Valley.
It's all about to fall apart.
The town is finally physically coming together.
Yeah.
They have furniture, they have a functioning justice system, they have a stable mess tent economy, and now it's all about to be ripped apart by city lawyers.
Which actually makes me wonder, seeing all this play out really makes me question this whole idyllic fantasy we have.
What do you mean?
Is this town actually a peaceful escape, or is the drama just quieter and dressed in flannel?
That is the ultimate question of the genre. Countryside calm versus hidden chaos. Segment 1, let's go.
Let's debate it.
Right, because part of me feels very strongly that it is fundamentally peaceful. Yes, there are conflicts, but look at the core of what happens when things go wrong.
Yeah.
The community actually shows up for each other in a way we rarely see today.
Sure, they help build the table. Exactly. When Rebecca is struggling, people physically arrive to help her build her furniture. Clayton delivers a handcrafted table. When she faints in the mud, the entire town stops what they are doing to make sure she is okay. Hattie steps in with profound emotional support. Rebecca trades services to help the Yost survive. To me, that is true peace. The deep, reassuring knowledge that if you fall, your neighbors will literally catch you.
That is a very romantic, beautifully articulated, emotionally driven perspective. Now let me analytically rip it apart.
I knew this was coming. Go ahead, ruin my wholesome fantasy.
Let's look at the cold, empirical data of just this one single week in Hope Valley. In the span of a few days, they had a near brawl between armed ranchers and prospectors over flooded crops.
Well, yes.
They had a federal Mountie unilaterally commandeer a private citizen's home and raise her rent under the thinly veiled guise of protection. They had an emergency legal tribunal held in a dining room where the judge completely ignored newly established federal patent law.
Okay, I see your point.
And they have people literally passing out face first in the mud from chronic exhaustion, dehydration, and malnutrition.
Okay, when you list it out like a police blotter, it sounds incredibly intense.
It's not just intense, it raises a very specific sociological question. If you strip away the beautiful mountain scenery, the aesthetic golden hour lighting, and the cozy sourdough bread, is this town actually more toxic and legally unstable than a modern reality TV cast house?
Oh my gosh.
Think about it. The shifting alliances, the backstabbing over scarce resources, the authority figures making up rules on the fly. It's basically Survivor, 1874.
Okay, wait, that is a wild comparison, but you are not entirely wrong. It is very reality TV. It's like, who will get the land patent this week? Who will be evicted from the mess tent?
Exactly.
But I still think the core intention behind their actions is pure. They aren't doing it for screen time or Instagram followers. They are doing it to survive the winter.
Survival often breeds the most chaotic, selfish behavior. The drama is just as loud as the city. It just lacks modern plumbing. Which naturally segues into another massive debate we need to have about these characters. Segment 2.
Soft life or settling?
Are the choices these pioneer women making actually empowering, or are they just severely limiting themselves to survive? Is this the ultimate soft life, or are they just settling for less?
This is such a big debate right now, the whole soft life trend on social media, people romanticizing baking bread and wearing aprons.
Let's look at Rachel Yost as patient zero for this debate. Is Rachel being a supportive, empowering wife? Or is she settling by letting Lars drag her into literal poverty until Rebecca had to swoop in and save them?
I mean...
From an analytical standpoint, Rachel followed a man into the brutal wilderness based on a highly volatile, statistically improbable economic prospect, panning for gold. When it inevitably fails, she smiles through the smoke and says she hit pay dirt by marrying him. Is that deeply romantic, or is that a trauma bond born out of a complete lack of alternative options for a woman in 1874?
Oh my gosh, you are so deeply cynical. I completely disagree. I think it's deeply, profoundly empowering.
Empowering.
Yes, Rachel is actively choosing love and partnership over material wealth. She isn't settling. She is intentionally redefining what success looks like for her family. She's setting a boundary against the capitalist grind of the city.
That's one way to read it.
But let's look at the Rebecca angle, because this is where I actually feel conflicted. Is Rebecca embracing the soft life by finally accepting help from the Yosts and Tom? Or is she just conforming to the depressing reality that she can't be a fiercely independent woman out there without a man, whether it's Tom catching her when she falls or Alexander ruling her dining room, bailing her out of trouble?
I think we need to aggressively challenge the entire modern concept of the soft life when applied to this historical context. There is a massive trend right now of romanticizing this era as some sort of idyllic cottagecore dream.
It's all over TikTok.
But making sourdough bread in a heavy cast iron pot over an open flame in the freezing rain is not the soft life. It is extreme, grueling wilderness survival disguised as aesthetic domesticity.
You are so right. We look at the beautiful floral curtains she's sewing and think, oh, how quaint and creative. But we forget she is sewing those curtains until her fingers literally bleed so she doesn't lose her financial investment.
The physical toll is massive.
It's an illusion of softness built on intense, unrelenting physical labor.
Exactly. They are empowering themselves, yes, but only within the extremely rigid, unforgiving confines of their historical reality. It's survival optimized for sanity.
Okay, this is getting a little too deep and existential. Let's lighten it up with segment 3. Because despite all that grueling labor we just discussed, I still secretly want to go there.
Of course you do.
Let's play a game. If we were inserted directly into the 1874 Hope Valley town map right now, what role would we play? We step off the carriage in our corsets. What exact jobs do we have? And what chaos are we accidentally starting?
This will be a disaster.
I already claimed the messy town gossip baker. I am absolutely hanging out at the trading post, pretending to agonize over which flavor of rock candy to buy, but I'm really just eavesdropping on the prospectors complaining about Alexander's legal rulings.
And you are absolutely the one shamelessly flirting with Constable Alexander to try and get out of paying your local town taxes.
Oh, 100%.
You'd be batting your eyelashes, offering him a hot, fresh loaf of bread, and asking if the Canadian crown really needs your $2 this month.
I would be playing the system. I'd be like, oh, Constable Vaughn, this land patent paperwork is just so dreadfully confusing for a poor, simple baker like me.
Huh?
Could we perhaps waive the filing fee? I'll throw in a strudel.
It would be a complete disaster.
It would. What about you? What is your actual pioneer hustle?
As established, I am the hermit on the hill. But financially, to sustain my isolation, I would be the town's underground apothecary. I would use my background in biology and chemistry to mix various medicinal tinctures, salves, and questionable tonics.
I love that for you.
However, I would absolutely start massive catastrophic chaos because I would try to invent a 19th century version of our rosé slushy. I would build some sort of highly complicated pressurized hand-cranked ice apparatus in the back of the mess tent. The pressure would inevitably build up, the structural integrity would fail, and I would absolutely burn the mess tent to the ground in pursuit of a frozen beverage.
Oh my gosh, you totally would. You would blow up the town's only food source trying to invent refrigeration for a cocktail.
It's a risk I'm willing to take.
And I would accidentally create a massive violent love triangle between the ranchers because I'd deliver a pie to Tom Moore, but then tell Archie Doyle that Tom said his cattle were looking scrawny. I'd just be stirring the pot for my own personal entertainment while I baked.
We would be an absolute menace to this developing society. They would have to form a posse and run us out of town on a rail within a week.
Listener Snark Squad, I need you to pause what you're doing, slide into our comments or DMs, and tell us exactly what your pioneer hustle would be. Would you be the burly blacksmith, the glamorous saloon owner, the perpetually exhausted school teacher trying to teach patent law to 10-year-olds? Let us know.
Please do. We need to know who our loyal allies are when we inevitably get exiled to the woods.
Yeah.
Now let's move into segment 4, our final and perhaps most unhinged conversation of the night. It is time to throw out our Snark Squad prairie theories.
Yes, this is my favorite part. This is where we throw out our unexpected, slightly unhinged theories about future storylines, relationships, and the impending doom of Chicago. And disagreement is highly encouraged here. Let's start with theory 1. The love triangle.
The budding, highly visible situation between Olivia the artist, Clayton the carpenter, and the dashing Constable Vaughn.
Okay, I am firmly emotionally rooting for Clayton. Did you see them in this episode? They designed and physically built that dining room table together. That is a profound act of creation.
It's a nice table.
They have shared goals, they respect each other's artistic vision and craftsmanship. It is sweet, it is foundational, and it makes sense. Clayton is the safe, wonderful, supportive choice.
It is sweet, yes. I don't deny the wholesome aesthetic of building furniture together, but analytically, Clayton does not stand a chance in this narrative.
Why not?
Look at the raw power dynamics at play. Clayton is a carpenter covered in sawdust. Alexander Vaughn has a shiny badge, a pristine red uniform, and the full, undeniable authority of the Canadian government backing his every move.
Okay, the uniform is strong.
In 1874, on a dangerous frontier, stability, protection, and authority are incredibly potent aphrodisiacs. The uniform is going to win out. Olivia is going to be drawn to the power and the security he represents, not the woodwork.
Ugh, you are so deeply cynical, but you might actually be right. The uniform is a lot to compete with, especially when he's out there playing judge and jury. Okay, theory 2, the in-law invasion. How exactly are Jim's wealthy parents going to arrive in town? Because we know they saw that newspaper in Chicago and they are coming.
They are absolutely not going to just show up unannounced on a dusty stagecoach. They are wealthy, urban, Gilded Age elites. I speculate they will arrive with a massive entourage, including a team of high society, ruthless Chicago lawyers.
Oh, that makes me sick.
They will bypass the emotional appeal and attempt to bury Rebecca in aggressive litigation. They will cite her living conditions. She runs a boarding house full of rough, dirty prospectors and doesn't even have a finished parlor as absolute legal proof she's an unfit mother in the eyes of the court.
Oh, that makes my blood boil. It is so unfair. But I have a theory on how it plays out visually. I think they roll into town in this obnoxious, overly fancy, custom-built carriage looking down their noses at everyone.
Very likely.
And Tom Moore, seeing Rebecca panic, physically blocks their path with Thunder, his newly broken stallion. He just stands in the middle of the dirt road, full rugged rancher mode, and refuses to let their carriage pass until they agree to show Rebecca respect.
A dramatic high noon standoff between urban wealth and frontier grit. I can absolutely see the network executives approving that script.
Okay, now for theory 3. This is my completely, utterly unhinged theory. Are you ready for this?
I'm bracing myself. Hit me.
I think Thunder, Tom Moore's horse, is actually the secret mastermind behind the town's chaos.
Wow, okay.
Think about it. Every single time Tom tries to break him, something massive and dramatic happens in the valley. It's a calculated distraction technique. The horse is secretly manipulating the timeline to keep Tom busy.
You've lost the plot.
Or, wait, actually, here's a much better one. Hattie Quinn is secretly a millionaire.
Now that is interesting.
She is hiding her immense, unimaginable wealth from Frank's pirate treasure stories, and she's just living rough in the muddy valley to see who her real friends are before she reveals she can buy the entire town.
The horse theory is grounds for immediate institutionalization. But the Hattie theory, that actually has narrative legs. Jill Hennessy plays her with a very specific, grounded, quiet confidence.
Oh, yes, exactly.
It's the kind of unshakable confidence a woman has when she knows she has a literal iron chest of gold buried under a loose floorboard in her cabin. I fully support the secret millionaire Hattie theory.
Right. She has that quiet luxury energy even when she's wearing a faded flannel shirt. Well, babes, these theories are wild, but honestly, anything can happen on the frontier. We should probably wrap this up before we officially book a one-way wagon ticket to the 19th century and lose our minds completely.
Agreed. My cortisol levels can only handle so much vicarious pioneer stress for one evening.
Babes, Snark Squad, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Thank you for drinking with us, for analyzing the messy, muddy drama, and for fully embracing the delusion of the frontier. We love doing this with you, and we love this community so much.
We truly do. And a quick reminder, if you enjoyed our descent into 19th century madness today, please take a quick second to rate and review the show on whatever app you use. It helps us out immensely.
Yes. And explicitly share the show with a friend who loves small-town reality TV level drama as much as you do. We want to grow the Snark Squad. We want more besties sitting on the couch with us, drinking slushies and judging Mounties.
Share the chaos. Let them experience the delirium.
And just thinking back on this whole conversation, it is so incredibly funny to me. We started tonight sitting in a modern kitchen, sipping technologically advanced rosé slushies made with a motorized blender, fantasizing about being cute, flower-covered countryside baddies.
We did.
And somehow, an hour later, we are fully, genuinely ready to relocate to a town with absolutely no indoor plumbing, constant, aggressive federal land disputes, and zero cell service. It is a very questionable life choice, but highly, highly tempting.
The human mind is a fragile, easily romanticized thing.
It really is. Now, before we go, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over while you go about your week, something we didn't even get to fully unpack yet.
Consider this deeply. If Jim's parents do show up from Chicago and they use their high-powered lawyers and the strict literal letter of the law to try and take Sarah away from Rebecca, what exactly will Constable Alexander Vaughn do?
Oh my gosh. That is the question.
He is a strict, by-the-book Mountie.
Yeah.
He literally just stood in a dining room and said, "I uphold what is right." But his sworn job, his entire identity, is to uphold the law of the crown.
Right.
If the law explicitly says the wealthy grandparents have paternal custody rights, will he side with his badge and the rigid legal system, or will he side with Rebecca, the vulnerable woman he is currently living with and clearly developing romantic feelings for? What happens when the uniform he wears directly conflicts with his own heart?
That is such an agonizingly good question. I literally have goosebumps on my arms. Think about it, babes. Whose side is the Mountie really on when the chips are down?
Let it ruin your sleep this week.
Until next time, babes, stay cozy, stay delusional, and we will see you on the Snark side.